Hi everyone, it's Nat here. Hope you're all doing well. On to sew in the signatures of my underwater journal and to finish off the cover. So we'll get that done. So you can see here I've got 4 signatures to go in. And in a previous video I prepared this cover and put the holes in. So I've got 4 rows of 5 holes there because we're doing a 5-hole pamphlet stitch. Now I need to make a template because the one I made in that video has been misplaced. So I've got some scrap paper here and I'm making it the height of the book cover and then just so it overhangs the spine on both sides. Now I've folded it in half and I'm lining it up with 1 row of my holes. And I'll just mark on the middle that we've folded there where each of the holes is, and this way we'll know when we pierce the holes into our signatures that they will be in the same position as what they are in the spine. Also add the letter T to the top of my paper because we want the holes to line up at the top and the bottom where they are in the spine. Now I have some crochet thread there, it's really nice and tough. For a 5-hole pamphlet stitch I like at least 3 times the length of my cover, but I always do a little bit more just in case. Now it is strong enough to hold them in, but I'm going to double it up, which will make it extra strong. So altogether I need 8 pieces of crochet cotton that are that length. You can see here I'm just putting 2 lengths of it together. And I'll thread those into my needle, which does take a bit of trial and effort. The 2 pieces, easy with 1. 2 not so easy, but I do get there. So you just make sure that your needle fits through the holes that you've prepped. Nice and easy. I'm just cutting one of my threads down to meet the other one at the end there, so they're both the same length. Now grab my first signature. Now it's very important before you sew it in and punch the holes in it to make sure that you've got all the pages positioned where you want them, that you've got them all up the right way, and you've got no issues there with any of that. So I always go through each of the pages and check carefully that I have them positioned where I want them mainly. Sometimes I adjust them a little bit, as you can see there. So once you're happy with the positioning, you make sure all your pages are nice and together in the center. So I push them all together. Then I find my middle page. I've got a nice heavy ruler there, so I like to put the ruler in the middle of my signature there and just lightly press down to make sure that the center of all my pages are snug in together. Now at this stage I also add my little template. Now the template does overhang the signature edges because it's a little bit longer. It's the height of our cover, which is a bit longer than the signatures. So there's overhang that we want on both sides. I just make sure that the overhang of the template is pretty well even out the top and bottom of my signature there. And then yeah, just apply the light pressure on the ruler to make sure all the pages are nicely together. Once I'm happy with that, I try and hold it upright, the signature, as you can see, and I use my bulldog clips just to clip the top of one side of my signature and then the bottom of the other side of my signature. That just holds all the pages together for me while I punch the holes and sew in the signatures. So this whole process is quite fiddly. I have learnt that it's best not to rush it. Just be patient, fix up any problems as they arise, and keep an eye out for all those problems because they will happen. Often. So this cradle that I'm using I got from Witchcraft Do You Do, and I put it together with a bit of glue and it's very handy for punching my signatures. So I'm using a quilling tool there to punch my holes. I do have an awl, but I like this for the thread I'm using because it makes a bit of a narrower hole and my thread is quite fine, so this will work well. So I just press that down through the 5 dots that I made in the middle of my template there until it goes all the way through my pages. And of course I have the cutting mat underneath so that I don't mark my desk. I just check that all the holes are coming out in the center of the back of the signature there. Sometimes they can be off a line, which is frustrating because then you have all these holes in your pages where you don't want them. So at this stage I need to take my template out, but I still want to leave my clips on holding the pages together. So you have to carefully hold your pages so that they don't move around, or else your holes won't be aligned properly. And just remove the clip from the template. I have many a time sewn my template in and had to either rip it out or just undo my threads to take it out again. No biggie really, but yeah, it's a bit easier if you take it out at this stage. So now I'll bring in my cover, and we want the holes in the first signature to match up that first line of holes there that I'm pointing to now. It's easy to get a bit confused when you turn it around like this and sew your first signature in the back. Now, you don't have to do the first signature first. You can do the last one or whichever ones you want. Just figure out what works the best for you. So I'm going in through the back of the spine because I want the bit that we tie off at the back of the spine, not on the inside. And that is because we're going to cover it afterwards. And I don't really want dangly knot pieces in the middle of my signatures for this journal. So I go through the middle hole of the back of the spine of the cover, and then the same hole in the signature, go through the back of the middle. I pull it through, and you've got to be careful not to pull your tail right through. You want to leave a nice long tail so that it doesn't get pulled through. Then I go to the next hole up, and I go in through the center of the spine. Now I do a bit of wriggling just to pull it through all the holes there because they are a little tight. And then we go through the corresponding hole in the cover there. So the next one up. Now the whole time I always check things just to see if there are any knots. Rather deal with them as they occur than later on. Then we go back in through the back of the cover, and that's the top hole there. And then back in through the top hole in the signature. Just wiggle it back and forth. I do have washi tape on the back of that middle page, and I think that's a little difficult to pull it through, so I just wiggle it a bit until it comes through. Now we go down to the hole before, and we've got to go back through, and this is where it can get a bit tricky because you don't want to catch the needle in the thread that's already in there. If you do, you can remove it, so I do check once I've pulled it through to see whether it's been caught or not. So that one's moving really well, and the other one seems to move quite well, so it looks like I haven't caught this one. So then we have to do the same with the cover, go back through the hole. Again, just seeing whether I've caught that thread. If you have, you can just take your needle off the thread and pull it back through. So you can see here I've caught it just a little bit. I can see clearly where I've caught it, so I'm just pulling my needle back through like that to get it apart. I do not recommend usually doing it that way because sometimes you just create more of a knot. I do recommend what I do next time I catch the thread, which is taking the needle off to fix it up. So now we're going to go down and we're going to miss that middle hole, and we're going straight down to the next empty bottom hole past the middle one. Because when we finish off, we'll come back to that middle hole and tie it off. Got a bit of a knot there, so I'm just fixing that up. The crochet thread can twist and knot quite easily. I do use all different types of threads to do my signatures. So back in through the signature hole. Then we can go down to our last hole down the bottom there. Now there are different ways of doing the sewing for your 5-hole pamphlet stitch and your 3-hole pamphlet stitch to have your tail ending up where you want it. This is just the usual way that I like to do it. And then we go up to the hole we did before, and again try not to catch the thread as we go through. If you pull on both threads, if you leave enough slack there, you can pull them up a little bit and see if you've caught it. And if they're both moving easily, you know that they haven't been caught. So we go back through the centre of the signature there. Just trying to avoid the previous stitch. I can't clearly get my needle through this hole, so I go in through the middle there to just shove the needle through, just to make sure all the holes are together. Then it makes it easier oftentimes to slip it through the back. So you can see here I'm taking my needle off that thread because I have split the other thread with it and it's caught in it. I'm just using my needle to find my threads and pull them through the other thread neatly like that. And that is the easiest way I find to fix that problem. So now I just have to rethread my needle, which is frustrating, but as I said, yeah, best to be patient, take things slow and steady while you're doing this. If you rush it, you'll make a lot of mistakes and you'll have to cut it all out and start again. So if you do make mistakes and finish tying off your signatures and realise something's wrong, you just cut the threads, pull them out and then start again. You've taken so long to make the journal, you might as well finish it off nicely. That's the way I look at it. Now we go back down through the middle here to finish it off. And through the middle of our book cover. Again, just checking that I haven't caught it. Making sure I've still got my tail out the back there. You can clip your tail to the top of your book cover with another clip if you're worried about pulling it all the way through. Looks like I've caught some of my embellishment there with my thread and pulled that through the hole, so I'm just fixing that up. Now we've got to start thinking about tightening up those threads because we've got lots of loose bits that we left to make it easier to sew it all in, so we've got to tighten them all up now. So some people just grab the ends and pull on them, but I prefer to do it this way to begin with. So with the top thread, if you pull that down, you'll get rid of the slack to begin with. and you pull the bottom one up, and then the ones next to them, you can pull the next bottom one up, that next top one down, and you can see that that takes in the slack from the most bottom and most top ones. And then you can pull your thread ends, and that will tighten all of these up. So I just continue with that process until I've taken up all the slack, and I do this bit by bit. So you can see how much slack there that I've had to tighten up. Then if you check at the front of your signature and the back of your signature that there's no knots or anything of thread, you know that it's getting nice and tight. It is also sensible at this stage to take your clips off and check between all your pages as well. It doesn't happen very often, but there has been an occasion where there's been a knot or a bit of loose thread in between one of the pages. So I'm just checking that I can't see anything like that. All looks good. And then I continue again with tightening off the top, pulling them down and the bottom up, and the middle ones down and up, fixing up the slack there. Then once that's done, I pull a bit firmer on these middle ones. Not so hard that you're going to break any threads, and you don't want it too tight, but you want all the stitches to be like guitar string, so they twang a bit. So here you can see I'm putting one side of my tail under and across the other side of that middle stitch. That way when we tie our knot, it's not going to be pulled through our hole. So here I do a double knot just to finish it off. Then I just cut my string down. I do leave just a little tail, but we will be covering it all over. I keep that scrap string too because I use it to sew in mini journals and that sort of thing, so I don't waste it. That's our first signature sewn in, and it's looking neat and tidy. So now I've got the second one here, so I'm going to do the same process, but I'm just speeding it up for you so you can watch it once again, and then I'll do the third and fourth signature off camera, and then we'll come back and do the cover. So now we've got our 2 signatures sewn in and looking neat and tidy. So we'll just finish the last 2 signatures and come back for the cover. I have this digital piece from, I think it's the Collage Tear Pages, if you can read that little bit there, from Witchcraft Do You Do? And I love it, looks like sand, and I think we'll use that under our cover piece, just to layer it up a bit on the front there. So I'm just ripping down, I'm ripping it in the direction that you won't see the white edges. Just making sure it's going to fit and stick out a bit from our cover piece. Now, I did do a video on making that cover piece, and I have a playlist listed down below, so you can go and check that out if you want to see how I did the cover piece and a few of the embellishments that I've put into this as well. So I'm inking, I think it's Vintage Photo I'm going around the edge with. It's really dark. I'm used to Vintage Photo being really light, but this ink pad's so juicy, it's really, really dark, which I like, but it's always a bit of a shock to me. Just looking at how it layers up on the cover there. Now I can stick those together. I'm using my 450 glue from Helmar here. Now the cover is a bit wrinkled there because it is a mixed media piece, and did get a bit wet. So it will have a few little wrinkles in, but that's all right. Trying to get it as flat as possible there. Now a few of the edge bits are lifting a little, so I'm just going in with my tacky glue from Helmar just to stick those down a bit better. So the cover I made with an old gel print that I did, and I used some pieces from Witchcraft Do You Do Digitals, and the shells came out of some books. They all went together quite nicely for this. I really liked the way it turned out, something a bit different for me. So now I've got to get it onto the cover. Again, I'm using my 450 for this. So nice liberal application to make sure it sticks to the cover nicely. Then any bits that are sticking up a little, I just add some extra glue to. Being the cover piece, I want to make sure that it's stuck down nicely. So I use my tacky glue just to tack the threads from the spine down. I want to just get them nice and neat in a direction so they're not sticking out from the bit that we're going to cover the spine with. Just to hold them down a little bit. And I love the spine piece that I created for that. It's your cotton frizz or cotton cake that I got from Witchcraft Do You Do. And then I just sewed some trims onto that and some charms. I really like the way that turned out. That was inspired by Kerry from Witchcraft Do You Do, a video that she did with some scrap trims. Then I have that hessian piece of ribbon that I'm using down the bottom. I really like the way that looks like a fishing net. So I use my 450 again and a liberal amount onto my spine, and then lay down my spine piece and just keep sort of pressing it down on there so it adheres very nicely. I'm doing this bit by bit because I don't want the glue to dry and not hold it properly, so I'm just doing it bit by bit and going careful. So only just wide enough, it fit perfectly. Usually if I cover the spine, it wraps around a bit. So this was different, just sticking something like this onto the spine like that. Wasn't sure how I was going to attach this and what glue to use and that. I did think of using matte medium, especially for the Hessian, but I didn't know if it would show up in the hole bits and that, because I have found that it can create a bit of film on the top of these sorts of book covers, and that's why I opted for using my 450 and my tacky glue in the end. And we'll just see how it holds. So far so good. I know the 450 holds really well, but if I use that under the Hessian too much, you can see it. It's quite glossy when it dries and you can see it a bit, so I didn't want to use too much of that to stick the Hessian down. So I did just check under the edges of that spine piece, and in some spots you could see some of the gold that was on the cover, so I just went along with a bit more glue in some spots and stuck the threads on the edges down a bit to cover any bits I didn't want to see. So I have this precision glue gun there, and I'm using that to apply my tacky glue. Then I can just stick my Hessian down. Now at this point you can see the whiteness of the glue, but it does dry clear. But just to be sure, I go along with a wet wipe and just try and sponge up some of the bits in between the holes there. You don't notice them as much then. And go under and reinforce any bits that didn't get any glue. Now the weight of the book can hold that on nicely while I fix up the back. Try sticking it down at the bottom first, but it's not sticking too well, so I go back in with my glue gun again. Now that glue gun doesn't heat the glue up or anything, it just helps you squeeze it, which is really handy. Again, just sponging it down to get any of the extra glue off. You can see it's holding really well. Make sure that the edges are stuck down nicely. Once that's dry enough that I can fiddle around with it a bit, I can go in and just cut the excess off that we don't want. So I go in with my 450 right at the end just to get any little bits there on the edge. Here is my journal now. We have the 4 signatures all in. You can see they fit in nice and neat. And then we've got a cover, and that's all holding really nicely. So I'm very happy with that. And a spine piece, which I love, with all the charms, and there's some sequins. Really pretty. And then that's the back. And I just wrapped the Hessian ribbon around there as well. So I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope it helped a bit. If you needed help with sewing your signatures in, I hope it made sense. So take care of yourselves, be good, and I will see you again soon for the flip through. Bye.